Hi, I'm Paul Dooley from AnxietyGuru.net with a quick presentation, and I want to answer one real important question and how it relates to fear and anxiety. That question is, why is anxiety so stubborn? It is a pretty good question. It's probably a question you've thought a lot about because you've thought to yourself, man, I've really tried all these things to get rid of it and it still sticks around and I have no idea why. I want to help you out with that today. And of course you're thinking about it because it can disrupt your life. You know, you're sitting around thinking, why won't my anxiety go away? I'm doing this, I'm doing that, nothing's getting better. It creates frustration, which creates stress, which makes anxiety worse. I can understand that. Been there, done that. So today I want to really focus on two things. One of them is the theory of evolution. Now, if you don't believe in this theory, that's okay. I'm not trying to convince you of it. If you do, it really does explain a lot. Now, as you all know, or for those that don't know, it's the theory that states that humans evolved over many millions of years from simple primates into what we are today. Now, the reason that's important is because it explains that at least part of our brain is primitive and still is to some extent, among other things. And so as we evolved, we did attain all these different abilities in high rational thinking, logic, and whatnot, which gave a rise to really cool things like the wheel, the computer, planes, and all that other type of stuff. But on a real basic level, we're still dealing with some real caveman type stuff here. One of the big issues is related to a primitive part of the brain called the amygdala, which is located deep in the brain's temporal lobe, as seen here in red. Here's a good shot of it right there. That is a cross-section of the brain, of course. Now, this is a better picture of the amygdala that shows the cluster of cells. Now, the reason it's important, the amygdala, is because this is the seat of both fear and memory. So now this is really important. Fear and memory living in the same place. Now, this is why anxiety is so stubborn, because you remember everything, and because that remembrance or memory is associated with fear. And the same could be said about the hippocampus, which is another part of the brain that's next to the amygdala that also has to do with memory and the mediation of anxiety. Now, like I said a little bit before, talking about fear conditioning, here is a good example where you have a mouse in a laboratory test. In the first day here, on the first cube, nothing happens to the mouse. On the second day, they play a little music for the mouse and shock its feet. Now, with those two stimuli given at the same time, the mouse then becomes conditioned, and he becomes conditioned so much that having either one or the other or both of those particular stimuli applied to the mouse will create a fear response. Very similar to what happens in people. That is, something bad happens to you associated with anxiety, and then you remember that, and that remembrance is tied to emotion, which is very visceral, very impactful, very powerful, which is why anxiety stays on your mind and is really a sticky problem and hard to get rid of. Now, how do you get rid of it? Well, there's a lot of things you can do, and it's kind of complicated to explain, but the purpose of this presentation was just to explain that you're not crazy, and this is totally normal with regard to the brain and how it works. Now, in some people, obviously, this is more problematic than in others. If you have an anxiety disorder, then this is going to manifest itself in an abnormal or maladaptive way. So obviously, there are or potentially is some issue. But the point I'm trying to make is that anxiety is stubborn, not because you're crazy, not because you'll never get better, but because it's tied to memory and fear together, working together to cause the trouble that it's causing. So I just want to make that clarification for you. If you have more questions about this particular issue, go ahead and send me an email to info@anxietyguru.net. I'd love to hear from you. I'm Paul Dooley. Talk to you soon.